Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. I shall be talking about the perceptions of the youth regarding language and identity. It's a picture of our beautiful island of Malta, and I particularly like this quote because languages should not be in competition, but they should be a way of completing this. Okay, just an overview of today's presentation. So we're going to start off by giving you a little bit of information about Malta's linguistic and bilingual context, the theoretical framing of my presentation of my study, the research design and the participants of my study, language use across domains, attitudes towards Malta's two official languages, that is Maltese and English, language and identity, which is the main topic of this presentation, implications for education and policy, and finally with our public comments. Okay, let me just put you into the picture of my beautiful island. So it is a small island. We have two official languages, that is Maltese and English. A lot of people also speak Italian because of the close proximity of our islands to Italy. They are two very separate languages, very different languages rather. So there's Maltese, which has Semitic roots. So it derives from Sicilian scuola, which is a mixture of Arabic and Sicilian. And Maltese is our heritage language. So this is what gives us our heritage, our identity and belonging. And then we've got English. This is part of our colonial heritage because we were colonized for many years. And obviously it's lingua franca. So this is very interesting and very beneficial for us. However, demographics are shifting rapidly. So why? So this started roughly 2 decades ago when asylum seekers and refugees started incoming to our country as a gateway into Europe, basically. Even before that, in 2004, Malta joined the EU. So obviously, transnational migration was on the increase, and recently the government has opened up the importation of foreign labour as a way to sustain our economy. What does that mean? It means that Malta is slowly but surely shifting from a bilingual country into a multilingual country. And this is obviously reflected in our schools. It is more so reflected in our schools because our fertility rate is the lowest in Europe and the second lowest in the world. So as we can see, there's a balance shift basically. So our classrooms are becoming more and more linguistically diverse. Now obviously this is very enriching, but it is also a challenge for both educators and students alike. There is a kind of tension, we can call it that, between the idea of heritage preservation, identity preservation, linguistic preservation as it were, but also global mobility. And this tension can be felt both with educators but also with students. Now, this study that I conducted followed a previous study which I conducted on educators. And I wanted to see whether the educators' perspectives and attitudes and feelings were matched by those of students. So last year I embarked on a project where I chose adolescents, okay, these were aged 11 to 14 years of age. And this particular paper which I'm presenting now is part of that large study. Here, I'm going to be focusing on language use, attitudes, and identity. I was very pleased because imagine Malta, our population is just over 500,000, and I had 402 adolescent participants, which for me was very positive. Why? Because first of all, as we all know, adolescents, you know, they are not in a position, they do not feel like they have to fill in these questionnaires, etc., etc. They don't really like doing that. I know my children are grown up now, but I've had adolescents a few years ago. So the fact that they participated willingly was a very positive experience. And these came from a variety of school contexts, because in Malta we have three types of educational systems. So we have the state schools, these are funded by the government. We have private independent schools, and we have church schools. And I had participants from all three, although the balance was not quite the same, we'll see that. And the focus was on how these adolescents are negotiating bilingual identities in today's Malta. So as we said, 402 adolescents, uneven gender distribution, a broad representation across school sectors, although slightly uneven, and mostly were Maltese born. Not because this reflects the reality of our classrooms, because as I said, our classrooms are becoming more and more linguistically diverse, but the cohort who agreed to participate, 88% of them were born in Malta. So there was only a small number of international students. Having said that, we also have non-Maltese students, as it were, or Maltese-born students coming from migrant families. So that has to be taken into consideration as well. The sample was predominantly bilingual and multilingual, which is very interesting. We had no monolinguals. So this indicates a highly linguistically diverse population, as I said before. Okay, so we use an online questionnaire, which was validated by 2 external experts. And the focus area was language backgrounds, daily practices, emotional connections to both Maltese and English, which are our 2 official languages, and attitudes towards multilingualism in education and also in society. The data analysis consisted of a mixed method approach. So we had both qualitative and quantitative analysis here. Okay, as you can see, the total number of students in Malta is just over 14,000, and as I said, we had 402 participants. Here is a visual of the age distribution of our participants. These are the country of birth of participants who are were not born in Malta. As you can see, there's quite a diverse cohort. Okay, this actually mirrors what is happening in our classrooms. Knowledge of other languages. Well, this is also very, very interesting. So we can see a variety of languages here, which our students are bringing into our schools. Okay, so the theoretical grounding of my study I went into language ideology theory, translanguaging. So Malta is believed to be a society which uses code switching predominantly. However, I believe that we use translanguaging more than we use code switching. Why? Because the lines between Maltese and English are very blurred, and Maltese people delve into both languages seamlessly and fluently and subconsciously just to meet their required needs. So basically, it is not a conscious language switch, but it is just the way that we talk. So I believe it's more case of translanguaging rather than code switching. I focus on multilingual identity and functional bilingualism to see my participants' attitudes towards the functionality of the languages which they are speaking and which they are surrounded by. And research questions. So we had, how do adolescents use language across home, school, peer, and digital contexts? What are their attitudes towards both Maltese and English? And how does bilingualism shape their sense of identity and future aspirations? The key findings, the nitty-gritty. So basically, the Maltese language was the dominant language used in the home. So this is indicative of emotional and cultural intimacy. So that is the main finding, which also indicates that Maltese, although we are fearing language loss, a language loss of sorts, but it is still very much appreciated and in use within homes. But then, surprisingly, the English language is the dominant language in school, digital spaces, and peer communication. So we see this change. Now, this is happening for a variety of factors. So digital spaces, that is a given, okay? So most of our adolescents are on social media, they're on YouTube and so on and so forth, TikTok, etc., Instagram, and this is usually loaded with by the English language. So English language is dominant there. In school, this is a surprising finding, especially within state schools, because only up to a few years back, the main language of communication and instruction in church schools, in state schools, used to be the Maltese language. In church and private independent, it was different. The story was different. But in state schools, Maltese was the dominant language of communication and instruction, and this is shifting. Why? It is shifting, first of all, because of the linguistic diversity. So peers are communicating with each other in English because it is the most used language and the most understood language by all the adolescent students in class. The teachers are also communicating in English to make sure to reach all the students in their care. And back to the influence of technology on our youths, which obviously there is a dominance of the English language. So the shift from Maltese to English is very, very evident here. And as I said, digital use English is more frequent and Maltese is very rare. Maltese only is very, very rarely used in digital spaces. Translanguaging is common. 6 to 7% mix both languages at all times. This is inherent to us Maltese, and it's natural and it is purposeful. Surprisingly enough as well, it is a surprise because since our youth prefer to speak in English with their peers within digital spaces and so on and so forth, they still showed a strong pride in our heritage language. So this was also very evident when 92% of our students feel that the Maltese language should be preserved because it is a symbol of our heritage and our belonging. But English is also viewed as very important because of its instrumental and aspirational context. So, what was very, very pleasing to me was that youth showed dual loyalty. So, heritage versus opportunity, without feeling that the two languages should be in competition. Their emerging identity is rooted globally, it's connected to local culture, yet our adolescents are open to global futures. And here we can see the language used in their daily lives, with friends, with family, school, and online. Balancing roots and mobility. So adolescents are recognizing the value of the English language as a key for their academic success, for employment, for their careers. And yet, even though at such a young age, they also expressed concern for potential language loss. Because obviously, if we are becoming more and more of a multilingual country, if the language of instruction and the language of communication in schools becoming predominantly English, that may very well signify language loss, which is a pity. But it was surprising and pleasing to me as well as a researcher to see that our youth are also feeling this. And this is something very positive because hopefully, our youngsters would be in a position to promote the English language, perhaps to make the change. There is a desire for balanced bilingualism, so they want to maintain Maltese while embracing the English language, and this reflects a negotiated identity. They perceive multilingualism for what it really is, so for cognitive, academic success, social and empathic thinking skills, but less were focused on the economic value. This is still seen as secondary. So we can see the economic or practical advantages. Okay, so conclusions. So Maltese adolescents, they actively negotiate both language and identity. Identity formation is dynamic. Okay, so it changes according to context, it's situational and agentive. And heritage and pragmatism coexist rather than conflict, which is very encouraging. Youth see themselves as Maltese, but also as globally connected. And the main finding here is that youths feel that bilingualism and multilingualism is a bridge between belonging and becoming. So, in conclusion, for Maltese youth, language is not a boundary, but a bridge. a way to stay rooted while reaching out to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.